The night before the wedding. The night before our wedding, Ethan Lewis sold all his shares in the company and bought a luxury apartment at 1 Manhattan Square for his intern. His friend Ryan Joe was stunned. "Damn, Ethan. Just because Sarah said she wanted a home, you really gave her a $10 million penthouse?" Ryan went on, "Your fiancée risked everything to keep the company alive. She signed a $1 billion profit guarantee deal with our biggest rival, and now you're selling your shares. How are you going to explain that to her?" Ethan chuckled. "You guys have no idea what I'd do for her. I've entertained clients until my stomach bled, nearly got taken advantage of by a client just to secure a deal. Emily has always made things hard for Sarah. This time, I want to see if she's changed. Otherwise, she'll never step into my family's house." I quietly placed the contract I had just signed on the desk, went back to my office, and calmly wrote my resignation letter. The wedding day. The banquet hall was packed with guests. Everyone was there except the bride. Ethan, furious, called me. "Are you still getting married or not?" I looked down at the marriage certificate in my hand and said evenly, "No. The Lewis family's gates are too high for me. You should find yourself another bride." Sarah wasn't like those fake innocent girls in our social circle. She was genuinely pure. At tonight's dinner, Ethan told his friends, "You'd better behave. If anyone scares her to tears, I won't let it slide." Though he smiled as he spoke, there was a serious glint in his eyes that couldn't be ignored. Tears rolled down my cheeks, my nails digging into my palm. For the past 5 years, I had risked everything to help the Lewis Group climb higher. I signed that massive deal, gambling my entire fortune, swallowed my pride, and forced myself to smile through humiliating dinners. Whenever I was wronged, Ethan would pull me into his arms, comforting me, telling me to hold on a little longer. I thought that was love. But now, seeing how far he went for an intern, I finally understood. "Damn it, Ethan Lewis. Are you actually in love with her?" Ryan exploded. "A house is one thing, but don't lose your damn mind. Don't forget you're getting married in a few days." Ethan looked annoyed. "What's the big deal?" Ryan, usually the joker, grew serious. "You sold your shares? Someone has to answer for that. What happens when Emily finds out? Aren't you afraid she won't be able to handle it?" He sighed. "Her parents died in a car crash. 2/3 of the company's shares were her dowry, left to her by her family. This isn't just money, Ethan. It's her parents' legacy. Even I can understand that." But Ethan didn't care. He smirked, rolling his cigar between his fingers. "Relax. You really think she won't marry me over this? Worst case, she gets mad. I'll say a few sweet words, calm her down, and she'll be back to cleaning up my mess like always." Ryan wanted to argue again, but Ethan raised a hand to silence him as he answered a call. On the other end, Sarah's teary voice came through, soft and pitiful. "Ethan, I can't fix this document format. I'm so useless." Ryan frowned instinctively. Ethan was known for being strict about work. A rookie mistake like that would usually make him furious, but this time, his tone was full of affection. "Silly girl, didn't I teach you that last time?" he said gently, standing up with warmth in his eyes. "Wait for me, I'll come right over." Before he could walk out the door, I set down the contract and fled in a panic, hiding in a corner like a frightened mouse. From the shadows, I watched him wrap his arms around Sarah, his expression soft and patient as he taught her the most basic document formatting skills, while I remembered how it had been when I first took over the company's affairs. I wanted to ask him to review the contract terms for loopholes, but all I got in return was his cold response. "What's the legal department for then?" From that moment on, I stood on my own. I never showed him any weakness again. My vision blurred, then cleared. The tear stains on my cheeks had dried. In front of me, Ethan Lewis held Sarah's hand, guiding her movements, his tone gentle as he affectionately brushed the tip of her nose. Sarah giggled, shrinking shyly into his arms, her bare face glowing with youthful innocence. She looked exactly like me at 17. As they laughed and talked, Sarah tilted her head up, and her lips brushed against Ethan's Adam's apple. He shifted back slightly, pretending not to notice, but the redness on his ears betrayed the storm inside him. On the way home, I opened my social feed and saw Sarah's new post. A selfie. Black hair, white dress, but this time there was a pearl necklace resting elegantly on her neck and shoulders. My fingers froze and a wave of suffocating pain surged through me. I rushed to Ethan's study and opened the jewelry box in his drawer. It was empty, just as I expected. The image of them together kept replaying in my mind until I couldn't hold back anymore. I covered my face and cried, then ran out of the house. When we were children, all the neighborhood kids liked to follow Ethan around, but the candy he gave out as rewards was only ever for me. Later, every time I learned a new skill, he would always give me a small gift as encouragement. For years, I had been his one and only exception. And now, even that had been given to Sarah. By the time I came back to my senses, I had already run into Ethan, who had just stepped out of a private dining room. When he saw me there, his brows immediately furrowed, his eyes sharp as if questioning why I was there. I didn't flinch. I looked straight at him and asked, "Did you give that pearl necklace to Sarah?" "You went into my study?" Ethan's voice was cold and impatient. For as long as I'd known him, he had barely ever raised his voice at me. But ever since Sarah appeared, things had changed. Fighting back the sting in my throat, I asked again, "Do you know what that necklace represents?" "It doesn't suit you," Ethan said casually, not even looking at me. "It fits Sarah better, so I gave it to her." Tears slid down my cheeks silently. In the past, whenever I cried, Ethan would panic, holding me tight until I stopped. But now, my tears only seemed to ignite his anger. "What are you crying for?" he snapped. "It's just a necklace. I'll buy you a more expensive one later, okay?" I laughed bitterly, my chest tightening. "Is that really what you think of me? That I only care about money? That necklace was from your mother. She said herself it was meant for your future wife. Ethan, if you want to marry her, just say it. I won't stand in your way." He groaned, clearly losing patience. "Can you stop being so unreasonable? Giving a necklace means I've changed my heart now? Emily Shen, I've spoiled you too much. You've gotten more jealous by the day." He shouted the last words, pushing past me with his shoulder as he strode out of the room. "If you keep this up, maybe I should really think about whether this wedding is even worth having." I hadn't eaten all day, working non-stop to finalize the contract. After this series of blows, my emotions spiraled out of control, and the pain in my stomach flared up violently. My gastritis and low blood sugar hit me all at once. My ears rang, my vision darkened. I stumbled twice before catching myself on the doorframe, barely managing to stay upright. Ethan paused when he saw my pale face, his brows tightening slightly. But before he could move, his phone rang. It was Sarah. She wanted to know the number of the private room. Ethan's attention shifted instantly. "Stay here, don't move," he said quickly, already walking away. "I'll be right there," Ethan said, hanging up as he strode toward the door without hesitation. The moment he left, I could no longer hold myself up. My knees gave way, and I collapsed heavily onto the cold floor. With what little strength I had left, I called out weakly, "Ethan, help me." He stopped for a moment, his figure frozen in place, but then he only turned his head slightly, his tone cold and laced with sarcasm. "If you're sick, take your medicine. What's the point of putting on this act? I'm not a doctor. Don't think I don't know you're just trying to get sympathy again. Haven't you ever heard the story of the boy who cried wolf?" His back disappeared from my sight, and at the same time, my consciousness faded into darkness. When I woke up again, I was still lying on the icy floor. My phone was buzzing incessantly beside me. I summoned all the strength I had left and managed to answer it. My assistant's trembling voice came through, on the verge of tears. "Miss Shen, something terrible's happened. The partner just demanded an additional 20% in security funds, or they'll terminate the contract. Tomorrow's the deadline for the investment agreement. If we lose this deal, all our efforts will be wasted. The Shen group could collapse, and the Lewis family might go down with it." Ethan didn't know the truth, that when I signed that contract I drank myself into stomach bleeding, that I had almost been humiliated by a client. I hadn't done all that just for him. I did it to protect the last thing my parents left behind. I couldn't let my family's legacy crumble in my hands. Without hesitation, I got up and rushed toward the office, calling Ethan as I went. Before I could even speak, his mocking voice came through the line. "Weren't you the one who fainted from stomach pain? What happened? A medical miracle? Or did you just get tired of lying on the floor pretending?" My heart tightened painfully. So it was him. He had ordered everyone not to help me. Did he realize that if I hadn't woken up, I could have died right there? The thought pierced through my chest like a blade, but I forced myself to stay calm and explain the situation to him. The partner suddenly raised the security deposit by 20%, about $30 million. I've already invested everything I have into this. I can't even come up with $300,000 right now. The only one with enough liquidity to help is you, Ethan, and this money should come from you anyway. But when he heard me asking for help, Ethan only laughed harder, his voice dripping with contempt. Emily Shen, didn't you swear in front of my mother that you didn't need anyone's help? That you'd fulfill that investment agreement all on your own? Where's all that pride now? After my parents' car accident, I became the sole heir of the Shen family overnight. Ethan was the only person I had left in this world. His parents, thinking only of the family's reputation, refused to let us be together. So I made a promise to merge all the Shen family's shares into Lewis Corporation, to complete the investment agreement, and to stand beside him as his equal. Now, after years of struggle, the wall that once stood between us had finally crumbled. Even his mother had accepted me, but Ethan had already changed. Before I could say another word, he hung up, his coldness slicing through me like a knife. When I tried calling again, all I heard was the flat, mechanical tone of a disconnected line. My assistant gasped beside me as she stared at her phone. "Miss Shen, look." She handed it to me with trembling hands. On her screen was a video posted by Ryan Zhou. It showed Ethan and Sarah sitting close together in a private room. Sarah was leaning against him, shielding him as he drank, peeling fruit for him with a soft smile. At the end of the video, Ethan raised his hand and with a grand gesture set off a dazzling pink firework display worth over $1 million. Sarah's name burned across the night sky in glowing letters before fading into the darkness. Yet it spread like wildfire through the city that night. Two young women passing by brushed shoulders with me, their voices full of excitement. "I'm so jealous of Sarah," one said. "Do you know how much those fireworks cost? That wasn't just money, it was love." The conversation at the end of the video kept echoing in my mind. Ryan asked, "Ethan, you've never done something this romantic for your fiancée, have you?" Ethan chuckled, his tone mocking. "I'm already giving her myself. What more could she possibly want? Don't bring her up now, you'll just ruin the mood. She's always been uptight. After the wedding, she'll probably get worse. Poor Sarah. While she's still free, I should hurry and fulfill every little wish she has." Meanwhile, the project deadline was closing in. The partners group chat had just sent a final warning. 10 minutes left to send the funds or the deal would be cancelled. I stared at my screen, watching in disbelief as Ethan transferred $30 million from his account, not to help with the project, but to buy Sarah her own private island. And when he promised to take her there for vacations in the future, something inside me shattered. Desperate, I called him using my assistant's phone and warned, "Don't forget, if the investment agreement fails, your family will lose half of its fortune too." Ethan had once shared that burden with me, putting up half of the Lewis estate when he couldn't bear to see me fighting alone. But now, when I interrupted his time with Sarah, he sounded annoyed, almost angry. "I'm just giving Sarah a small gift," he said coldly. "And you're using the family's wealth to threaten me? If you really had that much power to destroy the Lewis family, I'd actually be impressed." He was convinced the deal had already succeeded, that I was only using this as an excuse to ruin his date. My heart went cold. I forced a bitter smile. You'd risk bankruptcy for her. Even the careful, calculating Ethan Lewis can lose his mind for a beautiful woman. If that's not love, then what is? He let out a sharp, humorless laugh. If that day ever comes, I'd still do it. Sarah's pure and innocent. She doesn't care about money, only sincerity. She stands her ground. She once smashed a bottle over a partner's head at a dinner when he crossed the line, and when I offered her money, she slapped me and said she'd earn her living with her own hands. But you? You flatter those old men at business banquets just to gain small favors. Don't pretend you don't know why you almost lost your dignity. Flies don't land where there's no rot. If you can't say no, then you deserve what happens. Do you even realize how disgusting you look, acting like a saint after selling yourself? The world spun around me. Voices blurred together, Ethan's cruel words, Sarah's sobs, Ryan's angry attempts to calm them both. Through the haze, an old memory surfaced. I was 7 years old again, humiliated when a boy pulled up my skirt in front of everyone. I had locked myself at home for half a month, too ashamed to go out. It was Ethan who had found that boy, dragged him to apologize, and told me, "You didn't do anything wrong. The one who should be ashamed is the one who hurt you." Now, those same lips that once comforted me were spitting venom. My phone slipped from my hand, and I broke down, crying so hard I couldn't breathe. For the first time, I wanted to give up. My assistant stayed beside me, helpless and crying too, waiting silently for the countdown to end. But at the very last second, a message came in from the partner. Funds received. The project will proceed as planned. Congratulations, you've completed the investment agreement. My heart tightened. For a fleeting moment, I thought maybe Ethan had changed his mind. The weight on my chest lifted, and then a sharp pain hit me. Blood filled my mouth, and everything went black. When I woke up again, I was in a hospital bed. My assistant told me that, in the final moments, the transfer hadn't come from Ethan but from his longtime rival Patrick Young. Leaning weakly against the pillows, I sipped the warm porridge they'd given me and looked at the man standing before me. His face was striking, handsome in a way that could rival a movie star. "Why did you help me?" I asked quietly. "As far as I remember, we've never had any dealings." Patrick gave off a cool, unapproachable air. He lifted his gaze slightly, his tone calm and distant. "Our families knew each other a long time ago. It was nothing, just lending a hand." I pressed my lips together, unsure how to respond. "You helped me when I was at my lowest," I said quietly. "Tell me, how can I ever repay you? Whatever you ask, I'll do my best to make it happen." Patrick Young's lips curved slightly as he tapped his index finger against the armrest, his tone calm, yet teasing. "I'm missing a fiancé. Would you like to fill that role?" The air froze instantly. The silence between us was thick and awkward, but Patrick's expression never changed. He still wore that faint, composed smile, as if the question had been nothing more than casual conversation. Just as he was about to move on, I suddenly said, "All right." He stopped in his tracks, his eyes narrowing slightly as he studied me, trying to understand if I was serious. After leaving the hospital, I wrote my resignation letter and asked my assistant to separate every asset between the Shen and Lewis families. Once everything was clear, I would personally return to my family home. I moved swiftly and decisively, but my health hadn't fully recovered, so the wedding had to be postponed. I couldn't stand sitting idle. Patrick decided to take me out after work to help choose a wedding dress. But while waiting for him at the boutique, I ran into the last two people I wanted to see, Ethan, Lewis, and Sarah. A flicker of guilt flashed across Ethan's eyes before he quickly looked away, his expression turning cold and full of disdain. Sarah, standing beside him, was holding my wedding dress in her arms. When she noticed my gaze fall on it, she panicked and stammered. "Miss Shen, Ethan said this dress matches the pearl necklace he gave me, so he bought it for me. I didn't know it was yours. I'll return it right away." But before she could take a step, Ethan stopped her with a sharp look. "I said I gave it to you. Keep it. Don't make me angry." Then he turned to me and added casually, "There are plenty of dresses. I'll pick another one for her." Ethan's gaze lingered on me, clearly prepared with excuses in case I got emotional. "That dress is the boutique's signature piece," he said smoothly. "It matches that pearl necklace perfectly, and it's already been tailored to her size." Once I might have argued, caused a scene, demanded an explanation, but now I didn't even want to marry him anymore. Something that once meant so much to me suddenly felt meaningless. I smiled faintly at Sarah. "He gave it to you, so keep it." Then I turned to Ethan. "You're right, there are plenty of dresses out there, and plenty of men too." Ethan's pupils trembled. After making sure I wasn't trying to manipulate him, he sighed in relief. "Emily, if only you'd been this understanding earlier. Don't worry, the wedding will go on tomorrow as planned. After that, we'll live well together." I laughed bitterly inside. I already knew what he was plotting. His eagerness to marry me now wasn't about love, it was about getting back the shares he'd sold off. But unfortunately for him, I wasn't going to be that fool anymore. Later, when Sarah was trying on the dress, she couldn't zip it up. Ethan didn't even hesitate to step inside the fitting room to help her. I turned away and went upstairs with Patrick to look at other gowns. A few minutes later, a message came to my phone from an unknown number. It was a photo of Sarah wearing the wedding dress that had once been mine, with a line beneath it. Even if you marry him, so what? I'll always be the first and the only bride in his heart. Right in front of Patrick, I deleted the childish, provocative text without a word and slipped my hand into his. Together we left the store. The day of the wedding arrived. The banquet hall was full, every seat occupied, but I never showed up. No one could reach my phone. Mr. and Mrs. Lewis, furious, demanded answers from Ethan. He, fuming, called me over and over until I finally picked up. "Emily," he barked, "are you coming or not?" I glanced down at the marriage certificate in my hand, the one Patrick and I had just signed at City Hall. "No," I said calmly. "The Lewis family's gates are too high for me. Find yourself another bride." For a moment, the entire wedding hall went silent, as if someone had pressed pause. The murmurs among the guests grew louder and louder. At the end of the red carpet, Mr. and Mrs. Lewis stood stiffly in shock, their faces dark as stone, their bodies trembling with fury. Ethan's fingers tightened around his phone until his knuckles turned white. The flat, mechanical tone on the other end of the line kept echoing. Beep, beep, beep. He still hadn't recovered from the fury of being stood up when his assistant burst into the room, stumbling and pale-faced. "Mr. Lewis, it's bad," the assistant gasped. "Miss Shen, she submitted her resignation. She left the company early this morning." "What?" Ethan spun around, disbelief flashing across his face. He looked as though someone had just told him a cruel joke. "Is this another one of her games? Does she really think she can scare me with this?" Before he could finish, a sharp slap cracked through the air. His mother's trembling hand had struck his face with full force, leaving a red mark blooming across his cheek. Ethan froze, staring at her in shock. His mother had always adored him. She'd never even raised her voice at him, let alone hit him. "You ungrateful son," Mrs. Lewis cried, her voice shaking with both rage and heartbreak. "Emily is such a good girl. She's given you everything she has, loved you with her whole heart for years, and what did you do to her? What did you do that made her refuse to even show up to her own wedding?" Mr. Lewis stepped forward, his chest heaving with anger. "Explain yourself right now. Did you cheat on her? Did you break her heart?" But Ethan, consumed by anger, shouted back, his pride flaring hotter than the sting on his face. "What nonsense. All I did was give that pearl necklace and wedding dress to Sarah. They didn't suit Emily anyway. I already told her I'd buy her better ones. What is she so upset about? Does she really expect me to beg her for forgiveness? I actually thought she'd grown up, but she's still the same, demanding and impossible." He waved his hand irritably, as if brushing away the conversation itself. "If she doesn't want to come, fine. The wedding's off. Let's see how long she can stay mad before she comes crawling back, crying for me to take her back." "You bastard, Ethan Lewis!" Ryan Zhao, who had been standing silently in the corner, finally exploded. He lunged forward, grabbing Ethan by the collar, his eyes bloodshot with fury. "You still don't get it, do you? You really think Emily's angry over a few damn necklaces and dresses?" Mr. and Mrs. Lewis flinched in shock, rushing to pull Ryan back. "Ryan, calm down," Mrs. Lewis cried. "Tell us what's going on. What exactly did he do to her?" Ryan released his grip, breathing heavily, his fists clenched so tightly that his knuckles turned white. The veins on his forehead pulsed as he spoke, his voice breaking with restrained rage. "Mr. and Mrs. Lewis, do you have any idea what Emily has gone through these past 5 years? She bet the entire Shen family fortune to expand Lewis Group. She signed a $1 billion investment agreement, alone. She gave up her dignity to keep your company afloat, drinking with those old vultures until she bled from her stomach. She was harassed, almost assaulted, and she never complained to either of you." The Lewises froze. They knew about the contract, but not the suffering behind it. Their faces turned ashen as they looked at Ethan in horror. "Ethan," Mr. Lewis said, his voice trembling, "is that true?" Before he could answer, Ryan continued, his voice rising. "And what did he do in return? He sold all his Lewis Group shares, everything, to buy a $10 million penthouse for that intern, Sarah. Whenever she had a tiny problem, even a small ache or complaint, he was there at her side, dropping everything to take care of her. But when Emily nearly destroyed herself for him, he couldn't even be bothered to ask if she was okay. Ryan's voice cracked, his anger collapsing into grief. "Ethan Lewis," he said hoarsely, "do you even realize what kind of woman you just lost?" "Ethan, Emily was like your little sister when you were kids," Ryan Jaw said, his voice trembling with fury and heartbreak. "She adored you. And you, just to be with her, you took on the weight of both the Lewis and Shen families. But as time went on, you started acting like she didn't matter anymore. Did you really think you were invincible? That you could carry everything on your own?" By the end of his words, Ryan's anger and guilt overwhelmed him. He suddenly slapped himself hard across the face, the sound echoing through the hall. "I'm no better," he choked out, his voice shaking. "I caused so much trouble over the years, and Emily was always the one cleaning up after me. But this time I stood by and watched you ruin her. I didn't stop you. I failed her." The words hit like a thunderclap. Mr. Lewis swayed on his feet, his eyes rolling back as he collapsed heavily to the floor. "Dad!" Ethan shouted, rushing forward, but Mrs. Lewis was already there, catching her husband in a panic. Tears streamed down her face as she turned on Ethan, her grief twisting into rage. "You unfilial child," she screamed, her voice breaking. "For an outsider, for that woman, you hurt Emily like this. You even sold off the company's shares. Do you have any idea how much of those shares were given to Emily by her parents? They were all that's left of them. You're going to destroy this family with your own hands. My God, what have we done to deserve this?" Ethan froze, the strength draining from his body. He sank to the floor, pale and trembling. Ryan's words and his parents' accusations crashed down on him like a 1,000-pound hammer. His lips parted, his voice barely a whisper. No, that's not true." He lifted his head suddenly, eyes wild. "I didn't love Sarah. I just pitied her. I was helping her out, that's all. I never had feelings for her. The one I love is Emily. It's always been Emily. Mom, you have to believe me, Emily loves me too. She's just mad. That's all. I'll go find her now. I can fix this. I'll make her forgive me." He scrambled to his feet, stumbling toward the door, muttering frantically as he went. "The shares. Emily will understand. Once she knows the truth, she'll come back. I'll take Sarah with me. We'll explain everything together. She'll forgive me. She has to." Ryan watched his retreating figure and sighed deeply, shaking his head. "He still doesn't get it," he murmured, helping Mrs. Lewis lift Mr. Lewis onto his feet as they rushed him to the hospital. Meanwhile, Ethan drove like a madman through the city, his heart pounding. All he could think about was finding a way to explain, to make me believe it had all been a misunderstanding. He'd even planned how Sarah would play along, acting innocent so I would think everything was harmless. But the moment he reached Sarah's apartment door at 1 Manhattan Square, voices from inside froze him in place. "Mr. Wang, this is the latest project plan from Lewis Group," Sarah said coolly. Her tone was nothing like her usual soft, timid voice. It carried a sharp edge of arrogance. "Here are the key client files you asked for. Everything you wanted is here." A man's voice answered with satisfaction. "Miss Sarah, you really are reliable. Don't worry, the money's already been transferred to your account. But what about Ethan Lewis? He still thinks you're some innocent little angel." Sarah laughed lightly, a cruel, dismissive sound. "So what if he does? He's obsessed with getting back at Emily Shen. As long as I play the helpless victim and badmouth her a little, he'll believe anything I say. Besides, that annoying woman's already out of the picture. Once Ethan cools off, I'll sweet-talk him again. It's only a matter of time before I become Mrs. Lewis." The man chuckled. "Aren't you afraid he'll find out the truth?" Sarah scoffed. "And if he does, what then? He can't live without me now. And those shares? They're already cashed out. Even if he finds out, he won't be able to do a damn thing about it." Ethan stood frozen outside the door, his blood running cold. His whole body trembled as if he'd been thrown into an icy lake. The girl he thought was pure and kind, the one he believed wanted nothing but love, had been lying to him all along. Everything, the trust, the affection, the sacrifices, had been a trap. And in the end, he had betrayed me, Emily Shen, and sold his company's shares for a woman who had played him like a fool. Inside the apartment, laughter was still ringing out, but Ethan Lewis suddenly clutched his chest. A rush of bitter sweetness filled his throat, and he nearly vomited blood. His fists clenched tightly as he fought the violent urge to kick the door open. Instead, trembling, he pulled out his phone and made a call. At that same moment, Patrick Young and I had just finished attending his family's dinner. We hadn't held a formal wedding yet, but he had already given me everything that mattered. He introduced me to his family as his fiancée. Patrick's family was polite and respectful, but I could sense a subtle distance between them. Patrick himself seemed cold and detached whenever he looked at them, as if something deep within him resisted their presence. When Mrs. Young warmly invited us to stay the night at their family estate, I gently refused. We left together, and the moment we stepped out of that house, I noticed how Patrick's shoulders relaxed, like he could finally breathe again. During the drive home, he sat beside me in silence, calmly working on his laptop while I leaned against the car window, scrolling through my phone. Curiosity got the better of me, and I asked my assistant to send me a background report on the Young family. When I read it, I finally understood. Patrick's mother had passed away when he was 9 years old. Only a year later, his father remarried and brought home a new wife with an older son, 1 year Patrick's senior. From that moment on, Patrick became like an outsider in his own home. He had spent most of his youth abroad, living and studying overseas. It wasn't until recent years that he returned to the city. His family never truly accepted him, but they couldn't deny his brilliance. After all, the Young family's eldest son was an incompetent heir, and everyone depended on Patrick to keep the business afloat. I couldn't help but feel a pang of pity. Yet Patrick's strength was so absolute, so composed, that it left no room for sympathy, only respect. And me? I no longer had grand dreams of love. All I wanted now was to rebuild the Shen family's business empire from the ashes. Maybe, just maybe, Patrick Young was the right person to stand by my side. As I was about to put my phone away, my thumb accidentally brushed against a photo. It was an old picture of Patrick when he was 9. He was expressionless, but the slight upward curve of his eyebrows hinted at a boyish warmth. Next to him stood a little girl in a white dress, tilting her head up with a bright smile. Her crescent-shaped eyes, her laughter, she looked exactly like me when I was a child. My heart stopped for a beat. The vague memories I had long buried suddenly became vivid again. I must have been 7 or 8 then. My parents had taken me to visit a family friend. Their older son was 2 years older than me. Handsome, quiet, gentle, and for some reason endlessly patient with me. I followed him everywhere, climbing trees, chasing butterflies, even insisting on sharing his room at night to listen to bedtime stories. When it was time to leave, I clung to his leg and cried, begging him not to forget me. He knelt down, patted my head, and smiled softly. "Don't cry," he said. "I'll come visit you during summer break." I remembered his promise all summer long. Every day I'd run to the gate waiting for him, but he never came. Eventually, my parents told me his family had things to deal with and couldn't visit. Time passed, and those memories faded until they disappeared completely. Then Ethan entered my life, and I forgot about that boy entirely. Now realizing it all, my chest tightened. That boy, my childhood first friend, was Patrick Young. I turned my head slowly. Patrick was sitting beside me, focused on his work. The light from the dashboard carved his face in sharp, clean lines, his expression calm, composed, distant. His fingers moved across the keyboard in steady rhythm, each keystroke precise and deliberate. My eyes burned, and I whispered, my voice trembling slightly, "Patrick, how did you hide it for so long?" His fingers froze mid-typing. He turned toward me, and when his gaze met mine, the faint redness around my eyes told him everything. A small knowing glint flickered in his eyes. He closed his laptop and said in his low, deep voice, "I never hid it. Some people just have a bad memory." My vision blurred instantly with tears. That memory of him, the boy who once promised to find me again, overlapped perfectly with the man sitting beside me now. And in that moment, another buried memory surfaced, one I had tried so hard to forget. That night, at a business banquet, I had been forced to drink far too much. The client took advantage of my dazed state, his hand brushing where it shouldn't. Just when I was about to lose consciousness, a man had burst through the door. He had shielded me with his body that night. I had been shaking uncontrollably, terrified beyond words. All I could remember was that the man who saved me had a small red mole on his wrist. Later, because of the trauma, I went through months of therapy. Slowly, his face faded from my memory, but that red mole never did. So when Patrick Young asked me to be his fiancé, and I saw that familiar red mark on his wrist, I said yes almost without thinking. I thought I was only repaying a debt of gratitude to my savior. I never imagined that we had known each other long ago. That our story had begun years before, buried quietly under the dust of time. "It was you," I whispered hoarsely, my voice breaking as tears filled my eyes. Unable to hold back any longer, I threw myself into his arms and held him tightly around the waist. He smelled faintly of cedar, clean, steady, comforting. Patrick stiffened for a moment, then slowly wrapped his arms around me, returning the embrace. His usually calm, steady voice trembled just slightly as he said, "I'm sorry, I couldn't come find you back then." I understood immediately. That summer, the year we had promised to see each other again, was the same year his mother had passed away. He must have been grieving so deeply that he'd forgotten that small childhood promise. I shook my head against his chest, rubbing my tear-streaked face against his shirt. "I don't blame you," I whispered. "I know you were hurting back then." Patrick's arms tightened around me, holding me as if he never wanted to let go. After a long silence, I looked up at him. The corners of his eyes were red, his expression softened in a way I had never seen before. My voice quivered. "Let's never be apart again, okay?" He met my gaze, the last traces of distance gone from his eyes, replaced by a tenderness so deep it nearly drowned me. He cupped my face gently, his thumb brushing away the tears on my cheeks, and instead of answering, he lowered his head and kissed me, his response quiet, certain, and full of promise. After 5 relentless years of non-stop work, I finally allowed myself to rest. I took a long vacation, spending my days making tea, reading, and healing the body I had worn down with stress and illness. Every evening when Patrick came home from work, we would go out together, to the cafe on the corner, or for a walk by the river. He never pried into my past. When I drifted off in thought, he would simply reach over and hold my hand. The warmth of his fingers grounded me in a way that made me feel safe again. Within just a few days, photos of us together had spread through the upper circles of Harbor City. After all, the story was too juicy. Ethan Lewis's runaway bride was now dating his greatest rival, Patrick Young. Add to that Ethan selling his company shares and buying a penthouse for an intern, and the city's elite had enough gossip to last weeks. Ethan had become the punchline of every conversation, his name synonymous with foolishness and downfall. People mocked him as the perfect example of how love could ruin a man's career. Strangely, though, he didn't defend himself. He didn't lash out. Instead, he texted and called me every day, his messages stripped of arrogance, filled only with desperation and pleading. "Emily, I was wrong. Please come back. I'll find a way to buy the shares back. I've already cut things off with Sarah. Whatever you want, I'll give it to you. Just don't leave me like this." I stared at the flood of messages on my screen, frowning slightly. Beside me, Patrick had been quietly typing on his laptop, but the moment he sensed my distraction, his hands paused. The air around him seemed to tighten ever so slightly. I turned my head and looked at him, and couldn't help but smile. Did he really think I'd soften and go back to him? I murmured, half to myself. Patrick Young lifted his eyes, sunlight spilling in through the window and reflecting faintly in them. He didn't answer right away, just looked at me quietly, his gaze deep and unreadable. I put my phone down, then reached over and gently brushed my fingers against the tip of his ear. It was slightly red. For a man as composed as Patrick, that tiny sign of unease made my heart soften. I never change my mind once I've made a decision, about people or about anything, I said firmly. Long before you came into my life, Ethan Lewis and I were already over. I hesitated, then added softly, I was just wondering whether he really didn't notice Sarah's betrayal, or if he just pretended not to. Patrick's lips curved slightly into a knowing smile. He hasn't reached out these past few days, which means something bigger's keeping him busy. The realization hit me at once. Ethan wasn't blind to Sarah's deceit. He was biding his time. And sure enough, the next day, during Lewis Group's bid for a new project, the rival company confidently presented a proposal identical to Lewis's preliminary design. They were clearly prepared, ready to strike. In the past, Ethan would have panicked. But this time, he remained remarkably calm. Right there at the bidding meeting, he unveiled a completely revised, upgraded plan, one that not only fixed every flaw in the original, but also introduced cutting-edge innovations that left the competition reeling. When the meeting ended, Ethan reported the rival company to the police on the spot. He presented evidence of Sarah's collusion, chat logs, bank transfer records, even security footage of her secretly copying confidential files. When the police escorted her out, Sarah completely broke down. Struggling against their hold, she screamed at Ethan through tears. "When did you find out? Why didn't you just tell me? I treated you so well. Why would you do this to me?" Ethan just stared at her, his expression cold and distant, as if looking at a stranger. Without a word, he turned and walked away. Although he managed to salvage the project in time, the fallout within Lewis Group was inevitable. The board was furious that he had sold off company shares and jeopardized operations over personal issues. Within days, an emergency meeting was called. They voted to remove him as CEO and strip him of all executive authority. That day, I also went to Lewis Group headquarters. The moment Ethan saw me, his eyes lit up. Ignoring the board members watching, he rushed over and grabbed my hand, his voice trembling with excitement. "Emily, you came to support me, right? I knew you couldn't stay away. Those rumors, they're all lies, aren't they? You didn't really marry Patrick. You still care about me." His hair was messy, his eyes bloodshot, his entire appearance disheveled and desperate. "I know this was a test," he said, voice breaking. "I was wrong, but I tried to make it right. Please, just give me another chance, okay?" I looked at him and felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, only an aching sense of unfamiliarity. The man who once stood up for me when I was bullied, who used to guide me through the chaos of running a company, that man was long gone. I had fought my way through storms, through humiliation and exhaustion, and I was no longer the girl who needed his protection. But he was still stuck in the past, clinging to something already dead. I gently pulled my hand from his grasp. My tone was calm, steady. "I'm only here to reclaim what belongs to the Shen family." I paused, then looked past him at the board members in the room. "The investment agreement has been fulfilled, the shares that Shen Group once contributed to Lewis Group, and everything my parents left behind, it's time they were returned to their rightful owner." The excitement on Ethan Lewis's face froze instantly. His eyes widened in disbelief, as if he couldn't comprehend what I'd just said. His lips parted. He wanted to speak, but I cut him off before he could. "Ethan," I said quietly but firmly, "I've done more than enough for you. From now on, Shen Group belongs to the Shen family, and Lewis Group belongs to the Lewis family. We owe each other nothing." The finality in my voice made it clear. This time, there was no turning back. Ethan's expression crumbled, his lips trembling as he repeated, I'm sorry," again and again, like a broken record. At last, he reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a folder. Inside were the original merger documents from years ago, along with a handwritten statement transferring all the Shen family's shares back to me. I took the folder, said nothing, and turned to leave with Patrick Young. Behind me, I could feel Ethan's gaze burning into my back, filled with pain, regret, and the weight of too many mistakes, but he no longer had the right to reach for me. 5 years passed. Under my leadership, Shen Group not only regained its former prestige, but rose to become a powerhouse in the industry. Our business expanded nationwide and even broke into the international market. Through all those years, Patrick and I supported each other, our bond deepening with time. We became the kind of couple people admired, steady, powerful, and inseparable. When our dreams were finally within reach, we decided to hold our wedding. The ceremony was radiant with laughter and joy. I wore a white wedding gown, my hand in Patrick's, smiling as we prepared to accept everyone's blessings. And then, chaos. A figure burst into the venue. It was Sarah, recently released from prison. Her face was twisted with hatred, her eyes wild. In her trembling hand, she held a knife. "Emily Shen," she screamed hoarsely. "You ruined my life. You took everything from me. I'll die, but you're coming with me." The knife swung upward. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. Instinctively, I squeezed my eyes shut, but before I could react, someone crashed into me from the side. A sickening sound, thud, followed by a sharp, wet snap. The knife had pierced flesh, just not mine. When I opened my eyes, I saw Ethan standing in front of me, the blade buried deep in his chest. His face had gone deathly pale. He staggered back a few steps but still turned toward me, forcing a faint, trembling smile. "Emily," he whispered weakly, his voice barely audible. "I wasn't strong enough to protect you before, but this time I did." His blood soaked through his shirt as he turned to Patrick, his gaze filled with a final, desperate plea. "Take care of her," he said, his breathing shallow. "If she ever suffers again, I'll come back to haunt you." And with that, Ethan Lewis, the man who had once made me laugh, cry, and lose all hope, collapsed to the ground. His eyes never left mine, as if trying to make up for every wrong, every regret of the past 5 years. Everything went blank. My mind emptied of thought. I didn't come back to myself until Patrick pulled me into his arms. Only then did I realize I was screaming, crying so hard my chest ached. The man I had once loved, hated, and given up on had chosen to end his story by saving me. Sarah was convicted of attempted murder and later sentenced to death. After handling Ethan's affairs, I buried him beside my parents. On his tombstone, he was forever young, his photo captured at his best, full of confidence and warmth. Standing before his grave, I brushed away the dust on his nameplate and felt a quiet ache rise inside me. All the love, resentment, and pain between us, everything that had bound us for so many years, had ended the moment he fell. From now on, he would no longer be the man who disappointed me. He would only be the boy who once bought me candy, who used to protect me when we were small. And as for me, I would carry that forgiveness in my heart, move forward, and live the rest of my life peacefully, with Patrick Young by my side.